Hello, writers. My name is Tennyson E. Stead. I am a working screenwriter. I'm a working script doctor. And welcome to The Right Stuff. This class is the sixth and final episode in our series on finishing the rough draft of your 60-minute dramatic television pilot script and show Bible. And today we're going to take another look at your show Bible to make sure that everything's lined up and that the work in your show Bible coincides with the work that you've actually done, both on the structure of the series as a whole and on the pilot script. Any weeping that you hear in the back, that is Luna. Luna is a Chihuahua, and Luna is convinced that it's time to eat, even though it's not. So, as you can see, Lou's a tough girl. She's lived a tough life. She's very, very convinced that it's time to eat right now. It's not, but she's going to be okay. She's going to be okay for another 30 minutes or so while we finish recording this episode, and then I'm going to feed the dog. There's two dogs. The other's Gambit. We'll get Gambit on screen at a later time. All right. So we're just going to take it from the top. The first thing that we had mentioned earlier in the pilot script is the pitch. Okay? Obviously, we all go into a project with certain creative intentions, but one of the things that you're probably starting to realize now is that theme emerges in the subtext of our projects. I want you to take a look at the pilot that you've written, and I want you to take a look at the arc that you've mapped out for the series, and I want you to ask yourself what the show is about, not in the sense of what you're talking about in the dialogue, because the more you rewrite, the less thematic exposition you're going to find yourself leaning into. It's more about what themes emerge from the subtext of the efforts of the characters to achieve their goals. Now that your protagonist is starting to show the tools that they have, the preconceptions that they have about life through their efforts to accomplish their goals, what do you see happening there? What interactions between their own limitations as a person and the things that they're trying to achieve, the aspirational efforts that they're making towards a goal that's bigger than themselves, where is that conflict? What does it say about people and the human condition? What's coming from that relationship between them and their own goals that you find meaningful and important for yourself and for other people? Because that's probably the pitch. That's probably where people are going to relate to the story the hardest. It's also, we've had conversations about how audience members come into a show to watch and how they want to make their own observations, how it's not about the observations that we feed to them, it's about the observations that they make for themselves, about how and why the characters in the show are doing the things that they're doing. Try to look at the show through that lens. And then, like we said, it's a setup and payoff. In screenwriting, we don't do setups and payoffs. The show Bible is not screenwriting. The show Bible is a brief which is read by executives. The show Bible is very simply an educational tool. So you go right ahead and you do that setup and payoff. What problem is the show addressing through its subtext? Because it's going to make you seem like a very subtle writer, but a very strong writer to identify, like I said, that gap between the protagonist's being and their efforts. How are they fighting their own limitations and trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve? What problem is the show addressing, and then how does the show address that problem? Inevitably, the character is going to be struggling with their own poverty. They may be struggling with their toxic masculinity. They may be struggling with their own racism. They may be struggling with their lack of intelligence. They might be trying to accomplish something that nobody else believes in. There's all kinds of problems that they could be wrestling with in terms of where they're stuck and where they're trying to get to. So, what's the problem? And then how does the show address that? Make observations about the show you've written instead of talking about the show you were trying to write. That's your pitch. 2 paragraphs. What's the problem the show is presenting? How does the show address that problem? And the answer to how that show addresses that problem is through the subtext, by inviting the audience to relate to these characters and relating in a meaningful human way. That's the answer. The log line probably hasn't changed. The tagline is probably going to wind up being a great quote that you came up with through the efforts of your characters to achieve their goals. If you can't think of some other way to advertise the show, just go find the most badass thing that anyone said in the script and use that as the tagline. It's going to work. Comparables, maybe reassess that. Now that you've gone through this, executives really do like to think in terms of tone. So look at how the characters are interacting with each other. How procedural is the show versus how pulpy is the show? Do the characters speak very much from an obvious place in terms of their emotional, like how layered and how buried are the realities of these characters in how they pursue their actions? Find shows that deal with similar themes and similar settings in a similar way. Again, let the marketing people know that they're not working in a vacuum, culturally speaking. The synopsis of the series is something you need to write now. So the first paragraph of the synopsis summarizes the first 2 episodes of your episode breakdown, including the pilot. The second paragraph summarizes episodes 3 and 4. The third paragraph summarizes episodes 5 and 6. And the fourth paragraph, episodes 7 and 8. Okay? 3 sentences per paragraph. So when I say summarizes, I'm not talking about the events. What is the protagonist trying to achieve? The protagonist, over the course of the arc of the first season, is first making their preparations to accomplish their goal. They're pushing their efforts to achieve their goal towards the point where it starts becoming obviously unsustainable. They are pushing their efforts to achieve their goal past the point where that sustainability collapses in on them. They are pushing their efforts to achieve their goal through that unsustainability to a more sustainable place. That you can write, right? You can write that with 12 sentences. You can do that. Is that right? 12 sentences? Yes. So do that. Summarize the show that you've written, and keep it brief. Remember, 4 paragraphs, 3 sentences each. Don't stretch. Be artful. Use the words that you're choosing to evoke tone instead of adding extra sentences for the sake of tone. Say what you have to say simply, clearly, and evocatively. Okay? Layers come from using the words that you have for more than one purpose at one time. It doesn't come from extra communication. Main characters. You probably have a better sense of who some of these characters are. It's a good idea to revisit your bios at this point and just make them more flavorful. The pilot summary may be something that you have made discoveries about in your writing process, and that needs to be revised. And obviously this is an opportunity to polish everything, but the pilot summary and the episode breakdown are probably the 2 areas you're going to have to do the least work on. So once you finish the pilot summary, the episode breakdown, I will confess, I have written 2 paragraphs per episode on certain shows, and I thought it was necessary at the time. But I bet you if I went back and I looked at those show Bibles today, I bet you I would disagree with that choice. I think it's a good idea to keep your episode breakdowns very disciplined at 3 sentences apiece. So you've given yourself 1 sentence, you've given yourself a log line. That gives you 2 whole sentences to mess with. Again, don't get ambitious with those sentences in terms of the length and in terms of all the ideas that you're trying to cram into it. Keep it focused on the action and what the characters are doing, and express those actions using evocative words so that the tone is being communicated through the efforts of the characters to achieve their goals. And you wind up with a more efficient method of communication, and you're able to keep this document nice and condensed the way it needs to be. After that, you've got season 2 and season 3 to think about. So season 1 is about the efforts of the protagonist to accomplish this very big goal that they need to accomplish in their efforts to achieve what? As you look at season 2 and season 3, don't just throw an extra bad villain at the screen. Don't come up with something worse for the protagonist to face. And don't put the protagonist in a new situation that is somehow demonstrating their lack of preparation more extremely than the old situation did. It's not about the situation. It's about the efforts of the protagonist to achieve their goal. When shows fall apart after season 1, it's because everybody falls in love with the characters, and then they say, oh, well, what if we put the characters in this situation? Or what if this happened? That's not what you want. The protagonist is trying to achieve something. What is the next evolution of that effort? What is the bigger thing that your protagonist is trying to achieve? And what is the next logical step in expanding the scope of their efforts to encompass that larger goal? And then once you've done that for season 2, take a look at where that character would be if they actually succeeded in their efforts to achieve their goal in season 2, and find the next logical step for them to expand the scope of what they're trying to achieve into season 3. Let your character at all times drive the story forward instead of letting the story drive the character forward. And that's it. That's the rough draft of your show Bible. You've got the rough draft of your pilot episode from last week. And now it's time for rewrites. That's a whole nother conversation. We're going to get into that in future videos, and there's a very good chance we'll even do a course on rewriting for television and rewriting for film. Thank you for showing up for the right stuff. If there's topics that you want me to cover that I haven't covered in this, please ask. I'm very accessible. I'm going to be making content constantly, and I'm very excited about the prospect of building a writing community on this site. So the more people engage with me and the more people pull me into their process and the more we get to work on the things that the folks who are interested in, the better. And in the meantime, I hope this course has been helpful to you. The feature course is already posted. I'm going to be posting other courses over the course of the next couple of weeks as well. So the content's going to start growing on this site. There's a lot of material to get through. Please ask questions if you have questions. And thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being a part of this community. I will get that next course published as soon as possible, and I look forward to learning with you. Take care.